Hello, Monday for me, and we start with the Joker chart, United States unemployment. Here we are now just over 4 years into this chart, and unemployment is still 4% below where it was at the start of the recession 4 years ago. But the human mind tracks the parallel lines now taken with the red one at the bottom, which is this recession, which with the brown one, which was the last recession called 2001 at the top there, and think, well, project that up, and in another 2 years' time unemployment should be back to where it was. So that would be 6 years of excess unemployment. Unfortunately, I don't think that will happen. Something will happen between now and then to make that red line go flat and not 45 degrees up. Or at least its angle of upness will be attenuated. And I very much doubt that we will see the end of this Joker chart, as in I don't think it will ever reach back up to zero. Second calculated risk chart is construction payroll jobs, which are so important, and one of the reasons that things are turning up in the Joker chart, because housing is so important to the American economy. Construction employment down 2.17 million from the peak, about 28% fewer jobs. Now, that's important. And I don't think those jobs will all be coming back again, of course. And that's only logical to think. But there is a slight uptick which is causing an awful lot of good things in the American economy, because the economy is so based on housing. But you can see the size of the uptick, and it's not enough to float an economy. Moving on to a slightly different subject, but trying to get a theme together for this presentation: why it's cheaper to go to Harvard than a California state school. California has pared back on education spending while the Ivy League has upped student aid. Could your state be next? They say that where California leads, other states go. But California goes in such strange directions, I don't think it's possible for some states to follow them. But let's read at the bottom here. If you are the child of a middle-class family in California, it is probably cheaper for you to attend college at Harvard than at a nearby public university. Read the article to see how this could possibly be true. Another article on the same-ish similar subject: with ample reason, President Obama has grown impatient with my industry, and that's the teachers, lecturers, professors. In a recent speech at the University of Michigan, he said that while most new jobs in coming decades would require college training, access to higher education is increasingly threatened by runaway tuition growth in costs. We're putting our colleges on notice. You can't assume that you'll just jack up tuition every single year. If you can't stop tuition from going up, then the funding you get from taxpayers each year will go down, says good President Obama. Somewhere along the line there has to be a crunch on that subject. Funding you get from taxpayers each year will go down. It's unlikely, isn't it? But the threat is now there, and it's absolutely seen that these college tuition costs can't keep rising. This looks like Bloomberg. Student loan delinquencies are worse than you think. Now, we know about the household debt and US debt overall being taken on, and still, since the recession, there's been a huge uptick in student loans being taken on. Quite a wise decision by the young to go to school and get more educated while the recession was on, and come out with their certificates and ready to take up the new jobs. Students may be struggling with debt more than we knew. According to a team of 5 researchers at the New York Fed, they explain that borrowers were late on $85 billion worth in student loans in the third quarter of 2011, which at face value is about 10% of the $870 billion in total outstanding student debt. While that rate is more or less in line with other forms of consumer debt like credit cards and mortgages, it is also understated, the team says, because not all student loans can be delinquent. Now, I found this second paragraph quite interesting. You probably knew it coming from America. Specifically, unlike those other forms of consumer debt, students don't have to pay back school loans immediately. They get a break while they're in school and in the 6 months after graduating. Almost half of student debt is in those approved grace periods, dragging down the overall delinquency rate because they add to the total balance but not the amounts past due. Do you get it? All these recession student loans are out there and they're on the list, but they can't be delinquent because they aren't due to be paid back yet. Once researchers exclude those loans to more accurately reflect the pool of borrowers who can actually be late, the delinquency rate more than doubled. In the end, 27% of the remaining borrowers were late on their payments, totaling about 21% of the aggregate loan balance. There's an awful lot of naughtiness with this student loan thing, but that's really quite interesting because I had that old figure of nearer 10% for student loan delinquencies and lateness, but it looks like it's well over 20%, which is much more what I would have imagined. This might look out of place for the theme of this presentation, but I don't think it is. It's United States household real estate percent equity, how much equity the household, the owners, have in the real estate in the United States. This chart goes back to 1952 when the number was 80%. They owned 80% of their homes, and let's say the bank owned 20%. But now the equity portion is a mere 40%, with presumably the lender owning 60%. And let's say we have an inheritance thing here. If you're going to inherit, back in 1952, you were going to inherit 80% equity, and now you'd be inheriting 60% debt. It doesn't completely work out that way, obviously, but it's moving in that sort of direction. Let's go out into the world a bit more. Deutsche Bank chart giving us real GDP based on 100 at the start of the recession that they're having as March 2007. And so if you go up above 100, that's increase from that place in March 2007. And some have and some haven't. The haves are Switzerland, that's the blue line at the top, the Netherlands and Germany, who have, they're about 104, so they've moved on 4% from 2007. United States and France are at about 102, so they really haven't moved far in 4 or 5 years, and all the rest are either the same as where they were in 2007, or places like Greece, Ireland and Italy, which are far below where they were. Excuse me, take a little drink. And the Financial Times gives us the unemployment rates for under 25s in the Eurozone, where we bump into, at the bottom, those countries again, Germany, Austria and the Netherlands, who have youth unemployment below 10%, all about 9%. There's nobody at all in the Euro area between 10 and 20. Everybody else is all above 20%. And you can just go through all of them. Italy, all of them. They're all there, from all over 20% right up to Greece, and it'll be Spain, won't it? Greece and Spain, who are near 50% unemployment for the under 25s. But there are 3 there around 30%. I mean, it's a crime. Moving on. Talking of crime. Prison population of the EU nationals by offence group 2002 to 2011. So this is just into the euro, the starting of the euro currency. But that shouldn't have much to do with this. This is how many people are banged away, put in prison per year in the area, and it was just over 1,000 or 1,200. Well, let's just say just over 1,000 in 2002, and now it's getting on for 3,000. And I think that's quite a pointer as well of desperation. So what can be done? In the United States, this is a Fed chart, as you can see, of the effective Fed funds rate, what we call the interest rate. Peaked up there in 1980, and ever since it's been coming down and down and down, and it's been flat on the ground since 2008. So what more can the Fed do? This is what I'm saying. What more can the Fed do? The government doesn't seem to be available to do anything because apparently it's run out of money, so they say. So who can do anything? Can the private sector actually do anything for these unfortunate people? This chart I've got for the UK, similar interest rates, but I was going to use it for something else, for the nominal and real interest rates, and talk about it somewhere else, but I'll put it in here. It goes back to 1830, that's why it's so interesting, and UK people could follow the link here to an interesting PDF. An interesting PDF, let's leave it at that. But we can get the bank rate, and we can see it's the same as the Fed funds rate to a greater extent. At its peak in 1980, came down and down. It spiked up again just before 1990. But ever since then, the last 20 years, it's been coming all the way down. And similar in the United Kingdom, the last 4 years, it's been 1%, is it? What more can the Bank of England do? And we know what more can the government do. They are going for austerity. So who can help the unfortunates? And when it comes to unfortunates, I've dragged this out to finish with the Office of National Statistics, United Kingdom, says unemployment for young black male job seekers has risen from 28.8% in 2008 to 55.9% in the last 3 months of 2011, twice the rate for young white people. And I've finished here because what we're getting are stragglers or perceived groups, like the pig countries, Greece, Italy, Portugal, Ireland, are seen as stragglers and are kind of being cut loose and looked bad upon by the people that are just about staying in the lifeboat. There are the young people who are being not allowed into the lifeboat. They're a group that's kind of being cut loose and asked to fend for themselves and swim, and it looks like certain racial groups as well aren't being allowed in the lifeboat. The nastiness is coming out due to the lack of basically, as there isn't enough to go round. The main bulk of society is choosing who it wants to be winners and who isn't going to quite make it. Yeah. Have a good week. Bye.